From PBS News Student Reporting Labs
and WETA,
this is On Our Minds
with Evelyn
and Eason,
a podcast made by teens for teens,
telling stories about who inspires us. Hey everyone!
Hey guys!
So today we're going to be talking about family, and I think family is a big part of what shapes our identities and our values growing up.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think since we have so many student stories today, let's just dive straight into it.
Yeah, and our first story comes from Ava. She's a senior from Black River Falls, Wisconsin, and the person who inspires her is her dad. Here's Ava.
I've had an obsession with music since day one. I blame my dad for most of it. His career as a drummer was the inspiration for me to begin my own adventure in music. I remember my first drum set like it was yesterday. My parents got me a little pink drum kit when I was about 4 or 5, and I wailed on it day and night, trying to mimic the way my dad played. I never really got to ask my dad what made him start his career, so I sat down on a call with him to get the answers to my biggest question of all. How did he do it?
I've never asked you this stuff before, so.
I know, it's really weird. It's like we don't really talk about that. It's like talk about stuff is usually like, dad-daughter stuff, or you and mom stuff, or you and,
Yeah, a lot of catching up.
Yeah, a lot of catching up, because we don't see each other all the time. So music is a very, very tough career to get into. And a lot of musicians are very, very skeptical about asking when their kids say they want to be music. You're like, man, like you know what it was like for me, and you still want to do this, that's cool. And realize that, it's not easy, even as a 44-year-old man. Crazy to say that, by the way.
My dad, Keo Stroud, is a drummer based in Nashville, Tennessee, and it's safe to say he's made his dream come true. Here is John Rich introducing my dad in concert in his own special way.
I need the kick drum, I need the kick drum, I need the kickity kick drum, now kick it now. Give it up for Keo Stroud on the drums, y'all.
My dad was always apprehensive about asking me if I wanted to do music because of his experience.
But I got into music as a child, and my dad plays music, and he was in a top 40 band. He also had like a gospel quartet, and I used to be like this really weird little kid because my dad played guitar, and I want to be like my dad. So my dad gave me a guitar, and I used to like be on stage with them playing this guitar. I would basically be air playing guitar, which is very embarrassing now. But that was my love for music. And then, obviously my mom and dad are not together. And so when my dad, on the weekends, we would go to the music store on the weekends, and he'd buy me a pair of drumsticks, and they'd let me play around the drums. And then we would listen to the music. And my favorite song, especially when he would take me to school, was a song by the Gap Band called Early in the Morning. And it started with a rooster crowing, like, cock-a-doodle-doo! Black, and I would like jam out to it.
I think we all have our own favorite song that we hope plays in the car. Something that we play when we want to get something done. Something that inspires us.
My dad played in this top 40 band called the Common People Band. And those guys were very, very nice and very supportive of my music stuff. When I was about, 13 or so, I realized that I wanted to spend more time with my dad. And the best way to spend time with my dad, the best time that we could do is in the band. The incentive to get good was I wanted to be good enough to play drum set in that band so I could spend more time with my dad. That was the whole thing that did it.
It was then that I realized that me and my dad aren't that different. I started playing music because I wanted to be close to him. He began his career with a last-minute gig and moved away from home, but the road to success was rough.
There's only 3 gigs I've gotten from auditions. 1 was Rodney, 2 was National Star, which I got fired from. 3 was Big Town, I got fired from that one. I actually got fired from that one, and you were a baby. I called you, and I apologized to you for getting fired.
But he pushed through, working hard, eventually playing for big names like Big and Rich, Kebamo, and many more. Here he is covering The Lord Will Make a Way by Al Green.
I knew what I wanted to do for a living when I was 5 years old, which is rare. You know what I mean? That means that I eat, sleep, and breathe music. But, the ideal of it, though, is that whatever you want to do, you have to engulf yourself into it.
I think the biggest takeaway from his story is that no matter how hard it gets, never give up. Because you never know when success is right around the corner.
Well, that's kind of all I really had to ask. Anything you want to add at all?
I love you.
I love you too.
Imagine having a famous drummer as a dad. That's so cool. I'd be telling everyone.
Yeah, honestly, I think it's super cool to have such a positive role model like that in your life. And I think my dad played somewhat of a similar role. He's not a crazy famous professional drummer, but he guided me through his passions like photography. He's what got me into photography, and having someone like that is really important in your life.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think sometimes as children, we idolize our parents and we try to share their hobbies to have a better bond with them. For example, with my mom, she used to really like to bake. She would bake these like really cute, like bear-shaped cakes or stuff like that. And then now I'm trying to really get into baking because sometimes when I need help, I can be like, hey, Mom, can you help me? And she'll totally be glad to help. And it's like a really good bonding experience.
Yeah. And I think I agree. I think having that kind of activity that you do with your family, that shared passion between you guys, is a really good way to connect. And one good point you brought up is also food. I think that's a big part of your culture and your identity and who you are. And that's a great way to connect with your family.
Yeah, and that's also true for the student who made our next story, which comes from Priscilla. She is from Granite Bay, California, and her mom inspires her. So take a listen.
My family is originally from Afghanistan. Growing up, I've had the unique experience of balancing both Western and my ethnic Afghan culture, with my mom inspiring me to embrace my heritage. To give you a little feel of what home sounds like, Hi, Mom.
Hi.
Why was it important for you to raise me knowing my cultural background and heritage?
I wanted you to always feel connected to your roots, even while growing up in America. It's easy to forget where you come from when we are surrounded by a different environment. But it's our traditions, our language, and our values that keep our identity strong. And as I've gotten older, I've fallen more in love with my culture, and I really wanted to give you a strong foundation to navigate as you transition into your life.
I'm so grateful for that. I realize how much of a big part of me identifies with being Afghan. I even crave our ethnic foods like bologna and kebab on a weekly basis. I like to interchange our English words with Dari words, especially when I'm speaking English to help further explain points. I also love when we celebrate holidays like Nowruz and Eid because they symbolize how our family gets together with our loved ones. I remember when we were little, you always made sure that I greeted everyone properly. Can you share why that was so important for you?
In Afghan culture, respect and hospitality are everything. Greeting someone properly is a way of showing kindness and recognizing their presence. I wanted you to understand that a simple hello can make people feel valued and welcomed, and more importantly, feel seen. Proper salutations are a core value for us.
I totally agree with you. Even when I'm at school, most students don't even acknowledge their teachers or say hi. But I know deep down that everyone appreciates and loves to be acknowledged. I also remember that you and Dad always made sure we embraced our Afghan food at home. We rarely even ate Western food unless we went out. Why was that so important for you both?
Well, we wanted you to love our food the way we did. Afghan food carries memories of family gatherings, celebrations, and our childhood. The flavors, the spices, and the way we prepare our meals all have a deep meaning. Food is not just something we eat. It is a connection to our past and to our people.
I love Afghan food. I love going to Afghan restaurants, and I love seeing modern fusion takes on our traditional dishes, especially kochel shor, which is an Afghan cookie. I remember my first time eating kochel shor. I thought it was the best dessert ever. It's only made with 4 ingredients: flour, sugar, salt, and oil. Almost all of the cells in my body crave this ancestral treat. and I have been hooked ever since.
Yeah, that is because food has the power to bring people together. It is a way to keep our heritage alive, and even as we grow in a new culture.
I've honestly never fully appreciated these things when I was younger, but now I see how much they have shaped me. Thank you, Mom, for making sure I've held on to my roots. It's definitely something I will always carry forward.
That makes me really happy to hear. No matter where life takes you, Priscilla, you will always have a piece of your culture with you.
Thank you, Mom.
Thank you.
I honestly thought that was such a sweet dynamic between Priscilla and her mom. Like, they were really supportive of each other throughout the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. And I think it was so cool how her mom was so supportive of her, like, still being in touch with her culture. Something that, you know, the listeners might not know is that we both immigrated here.
Yeah, at the same age, too.
Yeah, in 2016 when we were 10. And I think, you know, thinking of staying in touch with our culture is definitely like a big part of what's on my mind every time I think about, you know, my heritage.
That's true. I used to think that it wasn't that important for me to stay in touch with my heritage until I think recently. I remember my mom was really like persistent on us having to celebrate Chinese New Year, like no matter what. And she was like, if you go to college, you have to celebrate it. And I used to not understand why until this story really made me realize that like it's so important to connect with your roots.
Yeah, I remember when I first moved here, I missed a lot of the authentic Chinese food I had back home. But as time went on, my mom started to learn to make more dishes, like the ones that I really like Peking duck and tanghulu. And I think it's super important for me to have that, you know, piece of home with me.
Wow, I think your mom has to share her tanghulu recipe. Yeah, I agree with that. And for some of us, it's our parents that unconditionally support us. But for others, it's a sibling bond that provides encouragement, like our friend Olivia, who started an art club with her sibling based on their shared passion for art.
Yeah, that's similar to our last story. Denver and Dylan are siblings and have a great relationship. Denver's homeschooled in Orlando, Florida, and Dylan goes to Emerson College in Boston, but they talk on the phone all the time.
Hi, I'm Denver Humphrey. I'm 16.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dylan Keith Humphrey.
To preface, I think Dylan and I were homeschooled together. We played tennis together. We performed together.
The best part of being siblings is having almost like a forever teammate, giving each other the space to fall, to climb. And we're not twins. We're not twins. I've led you, you've led me. Like, people might mistake it for twin telepathy when it's just giving a piece of your own consciousness to this one person because you care deeply about them.
All of our major life experiences, our winning tennis tournaments, or acting on set, all of these major life experiences have always been together. And I feel like when you've always had those together, it's like, at this point, this person is just gonna rock with me and I'm gonna rock with them. So it's like you're not doing it alone. If
there was like one thing I could like say to you, like, you can do it. Like, there's not much you couldn't do. I think the world's your oyster, and I really think you're unstoppable.
Yeah. Oh, that's so sweet. So I feel like I see our relationship evolving into something that is very fluid.
It truly comes down to being there for the other. It could have gone anywhere. It could have gone anywhere, and it's literally come to this place where we're both good. And we're both happy and there's a lot of peace. Peace! The one thing that we'll always have in this very turbulent time in society is each other.
They have such a comfortable dynamic with each other. Like, you can really tell they've been close.
Yeah, it honestly kind of reminds me of my cousin. I don't have an immediate sibling, but my cousin who lives in China and I are really, really close. But the funny thing is, whenever I go back to China, I'm not confident in my Chinese, but she's introverted. So what we end up doing is we just stand in silence next to each other and like not talk to anyone in public, but we're just like on the same wavelength, like communicating like via brain waves and just standing there.
Next week, we have another author episode, this one with Wyatt Mayes. He's a novelist. He's written a number of books, including The Sympathizer. His work explores culture identity.
Before we go, we have another podcast we recommend you check out.
Have you ever wondered why our attention spans seem to be shrinking? Or whether there's a cure for pathological lying? Or maybe you've wondered what's behind the teen mental health crisis? Well, the good news is there is scientific research that tackles these subjects and many more. Join me, Kim Mills, each week for the American Psychological Association's podcast, Speaking of Psychology. We'll explore the latest research to help you apply the science of psychology to your everyday life. Speaking of Psychology is available wherever you get your podcasts or at www.speakingofpsychology.org.
Today's segments were produced by Ava, Priscilla, Denver, and Dylan.
Lead podcast producer Briget Ganske produced this episode with editing and mixing by Wyatt Mayes and help from Genesis Magpayo.
Ryan James is our camera and audio operator.
Approval and oversight by editorial director Marie Cusick and executive producer Leah Clapman.
Theme music by Isaiah Brown, additional music from Blue Dot Sessions, and special thanks to Keo Stroud for providing music for Ava's story.
See you next week.